Well, on this show, we've talked a lot about money, relationships, health, and business. One topic we have not touched on at all is the topic of worms. Yes, that's right, worms. On today's show, you're going to meet a worm advocate. Hello, I'm Shannon Skinner, and this is Extraordinary Women TV. My first guest today is Cathy Nesbitt, and she's the founder of Cathys, Crawly, Composters, and she's here to, well, open up a can of worms. Later in the segment, before we take a break, I'll have my regular Good to Know Minute when I ask my guests for their top success tip. You'll hear Cathy's. In the second half of the show, we'll be talking about personality types. And what personality type are you? Well, stay with us to find out. Cathy Nesbitt, nice to have you here today.
Thank you, Shannon. Easy for me to say. I'm pleased to be here.
Oh, that's great. Now, I've never met a worm advocate before.
Good, I'm glad.
Are there many of you around?
We're growing in number. It's worms. But there's not many. There really is not. Not enough.
Now, this is really an interesting field. You began your career in the area of social work. Let's just talk a little bit about that.
Well, I was a secretary for 20 years, my first 20 years of my work life, and then I was getting my psych degree, 15 years to get my degree. 2000 I graduated, got a job at a group home working with challenged adults. I loved that work. I thought I had come home. I thought this is the work I'm meant to do. I had trouble with management. So I had to leave that work. I went to a school and I was a freelance behavior management specialist. It sounds impressive, but it doesn't fit on a business card.
Right, yeah.
And I got injured at work. And while I was at the group home, I discovered that they didn't compost. And although they were producing a lot of food scraps, and you pay a lot to get rid of food scraps if you produce a lot, because it rots, creates odor, flies, whatever. So when I approached management about composting, they said we don't need the fertilizer because we have cows. So it was the first time that I realized people don't connect what they're doing. They're producing all this food scraps and then paying to get rid of it, instead of creating something wonderful from it and maybe selling it. If they didn't need the fertilizer for their gardens because they had manure, they could sell the compost and make money.
So you saw a business opportunity?
Absolutely, yes. I was afraid of worms actually before starting my worm business.
I have to say I'm afraid of worms.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, and not afraid that they're going to harm you, just that they're gross or icky. Yes, that's how I was feeling. About 15 years ago or 20 years ago maybe now, I was looking after a teacher's worm bin. And I think in life we need to try things first and then decide if it's for us. So
that's a good way. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm an avid gardener and composter, so I knew the value of the worm compost, but I didn't really want to have the worms in the house. This is indoor composting that I'm talking about here.
Right, okay.
So I looked after this teacher's worm bin, and it really was a bit of a disaster in that I had fruit flies. I would throw the food in, and it does need to be managed. It's inside. So at the end of that summer, I said, gosh, I'm never going to do worm composting again. If I want to get the compost, I'll just buy the compost somewhere. So the group home, the greenhouse manager said to me, why don't we do worm composting? So I don't know if you've ever done anything that didn't quite work out the way you thought it was going to, and you said, I'm never going to do that again.
Oh, a million times.
And then
my parents will attest.
and then somebody later on will say to you, hey, Shannon, why don't we... and whatever it was that didn't work out for you, and you get that feeling in the pit of your stomach like, oh no, that didn't work last time, I don't really want to do that again. So that happened to me. I thought, oh gosh, I don't want to do that. But I started to do research into the red wiggler worms, and I discovered the magic. They eat half their weight per day, live up to 10 years, have 5 hearts each, turn garbage into gold. And I had a shift. So fear is just the unknown. You don't know what's going to happen if you're afraid of the dark. You don't know what's going to happen when you turn the lights out.
Sure.
That's why you're afraid. I was afraid of the worms, not that I thought they would harm me, just that they were kind of creepy and gross. I had a shift in my thinking, and I love the worms now. I just think these little creatures have been waiting millions of years to serve their purpose. Their time has come.
And here Cathy walks in.
And here I am. So being
yeah.
afraid, sorry to interrupt, so being afraid of the worms helps me when I do a lot of exhibiting. So when I'm at my booth and people come up and say, oh, what are you doing here? And I say I have worms and whatnot, people will take a step back and show their fear and say, oh gosh, I could never do this in my house. I get it.
It's a very strong image when you say, well, I'm a worm farmer. I mean,
Yes.
it's a very strong image that comes to mind immediately.
Yes.
So you're going to, I can understand why you would get reaction.
Yes. But when you realize, so that's why that's why I call myself a worm advocate, because I'm here raising awareness about the value of the worms and why we need to have them and what purpose they'll serve.
So let's just talk about, well, what exactly is Cathy's Crawly Composters?
We're a worm composting business, enterprise, and it's indoor composting.
Right.
So are you familiar with outdoor composting?
Yes. Yeah.
Great, fabulous. So it's the same idea, except it's done
I don't do it though.
Oh.
Shame on me.
Well, no judgment. We'll talk after.
Okay, good.
Maybe you'll get worms.
You've got some tips. Good. Okay,
so it's the same as outdoor composting, except it's done inside. So this is a wonderful solution for anybody that lives in a condo, in a multi-res, in a townhouse, anywhere you don't have access to an outdoor composter or an organic collection program, e.g. the green bin.
Right.
So this is a great solution. So it's the container about the size of a Rubbermaid toad or a blue box.
Yeah.
It's your food scraps and your paper. So
And that's it.
That's it. So the bedding is the paper, which the worms eat as well, and then the food scraps is your peels, your coffee grounds, coffee, tea, pasta, rice. It's all of your organic matter. What stays out? No meat, no dairy, no sauce. So you just bury the scraps in. Remember I said I would just throw the food in, so I got fruit flies. You need to bury the food so the fruit flies can't find it. It is one of the issues.
So this is sort of for anyone, urban, anyone who's living on a farm. It doesn't really matter. It's just in your own home. You can do your own composting. Maybe talk about sort of what does that actually mean. And I know that later on we'll talk a little bit about how you can actually put together your own composting unit. But I mean, really, what are the benefits? If you could paint a picture.
Oh gosh, well, I started my business as a waste management tool. So I started in 2002. The Keel Valley landfill closed, where the Greater Toronto Area puts their garbage. When the landfill for the city in the largest city in a country closes, it's a problem. And the garbage crisis was here already. You know, in the 70s, it was starting because we started to become real consumers. The garbage crisis wasn't here until the landfill closed. Oh my gosh,
Right.
Now what do we do with all this garbage? 5 million people in the Greater Toronto Area. What do we do with all this garbage? So my initial thing was for waste management, paper and food scraps. So two of the things from the waste stream can be composted. Not only that, then the worms will eat that and convert it into compost, which can then grow more nutritious fruits and vegetables naturally, so we can reduce our chemical use and reduce the load on the landfill. So it's just magic. So reducing the trucks. So we have the green bin program now, but a magic truck still needs to come to every house, and it's a solution for householders. If you live in an apartment, you still don't have a solution for your organic matter.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So it's creating black gold for gardening. So I started my business as a waste management tool, but then I realized, oh my gosh, not only is it relieving the stress on the landfill, it's also creating a fabulous product that you can grow fruits and vegetables with more nutrition. You know, we can keep on, although we can keep growing food in the same soil, if we're not adding the nutrients and the life back in, we're depleting the soil, so the soil becomes degraded, and this is nothing new, I'm not saying anything new, but our food doesn't have the same nutrient value that it used to have, because we're taking from the land, but we're not putting back.
Right.
Right? So putting
That's
back
true,
in, we
yeah.
can, this is a hopeful solution to climate change, something we can all do and fix what we've done. It's magic.
So how would it affect climate change? I mean, indoor composting.
Indoor compost,
yeah.
again, because the compost, rather than it rotting, if you've ever smelled rotting food, that's the methane. So methane is
Right.
the most powerful greenhouse gas that we are aware of. So Rotting food, when you smell rotting food, that's methane that's seeping into your house.
Okay.
But composting is an aerobic process, meaning with oxygen. When methane is produced, it's anaerobic without oxygen. So it's just rotting food. Composting should never smell like rotting food. If it smells like rotting food, it's rotting food, off-gassing methane, and not composting, just creating a fine product.
But I mean, if you have a bin of worms in your home, I mean, does it smell?
It doesn't smell. It's aerobic.
Right.
So it may have a smell of, you know, an earthy smell, like the forest floor after a rain. It may smell like that. It is quite wet. It's about 75% humidity. The worms are 90% moisture, so require a fairly moist environment. But they can't swim or they'd be fish. Yeah, so it doesn't smell bad. If it smells bad, it's that too much food is being placed in.
Right.
And the oxygen is getting squished out, but as the food breaks down, the juice gets released. So the juice could squish out the oxygen in the bedding and create anaerobic or smelly conditions.
Now, you have, in addition to your farm, so basically, if I wanted to start my own indoor composting, I could just come and buy worms from you.
Right.
Correct? But you also speak. I know you've been profiled in numerous media outlets now.
Yes.
You're becoming famous.
Yes.
And you speak all over.
Yes.
As a worm advocate.
As a worm advocate, actually, I've been in several provinces. I spoke at a conference in North Carolina, and I'm heading to Guatemala in March. I don't know if you wanted to head there now already.
Let's talk about your Guatemala. What are you doing in Guatemala?
Well, in Guatemala, on social media, which is a wonderful arena for connecting with people, I discovered this organization called BioEarth in Guatemala. I'm not even sure how it came about, but I saw a tweet about it. It's in a whole nother world, Twitter. And I found this organization that's helping women living around the dump in Guatemala City with worm composters as a micro business. So they can grow food for their families, sell a little bit of the soil, the black gold. And their mission is to eradicate extreme poverty.
Now they have, when you talk about the dump, you're talking about there's an open
It's
dump
a pit.
literally in the city, in the center of the city that people live around.
It's Central America's largest. Okay. And I didn't say landfill because landfill is a sanitary process. There's a liner and it's actually somewhat contained. Although we do put our garbage there. It's not a dump. A dump is you just put your garbage there. It's not managed. It's, you know, it's... So the worms are serving a purpose to help these women to better their lives. So we met up on Twitter and I sent out a tweet saying, what an awesome organization, red wiggler worms are the way. Nothing, just thinking, wow, everyone should know about this. The executive director wrote me back and said that I was awesome and when could I come to Guatemala. So I wrote back, thank you for the invite, let me see how I can. This was actually Halloween, October 31st, and very quickly things are taking place, magic is happening, and she sent me an email and said, we really need your help here to help market what we're doing. And so now I'm heading there for a couple of weeks to help them out.
Well, I think that sounds really, it's really inspiring, so I wish you all the best. Now, so we're going to take a break, and before we do, it's my Good to Know Minute, and Cathy, I know you've got a great success tip, so jump right in there.
My Good to Know tip is, it is an expression that I live by, and that is, it's no for sure unless you ask. You may still get a no, but it's no for sure unless you ask. You need to take action. I've discovered that people want to help other people, but they need to know what you need. So ask. It's no for sure unless you ask.
Well, that's good to know. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, more with Cathy Nesbitt, founder of Cathys Crawly Composters and worm advocate. So stay where you are. Welcome back to the show. I'm speaking with Cathy Nesbitt, who is the owner of Cathys Crawly Composters. She is a worm advocate, and this is a very inspiring conversation. Certainly not one that I've had before. I've never really talked to, I've never met a worm advocate before, and I'm learning, we're going to learn all things worms the next few minutes. I think you talked about the reaction of others to you and what you're doing. Has that affected you at all?
At the beginning, it did. I would take it personally, like, oh my gosh, that's so hurtful. But then I discovered it's really their stuff. This is their issue, their fear, their not wanting to face reality or whatever it is. So I stopped taking that on. And I started being more compassionate that, okay, I was there as well. I was afraid of the worms. And when I talk about the worms and what they do, I find that people really do soften in their stance. They're like, oh gosh, I didn't realize how important these little creatures were. So people may not want to have them in their house, but at least they can understand why they need them or why they're valuable.
And you managed to use humor to disarm much of that. I mean, I've watched some of your videos, as I saw during the break. But you've really managed to capture the humor in what you're doing.
I love what I'm doing, Shannon. I just am having the time of my life. I feel like I'm on a magic carpet ride for the last 10 years. I found my way, and what I really want for other people is for them to find their way. What is the worm farm for you? It is an odd thing. And not everybody, I don't expect everybody to go and start a worm business because it wouldn't be their passion. Find what it is that fires you up so you can get up every day and say, yay, I'm so excited about what I'm doing. And it may not be a business, but just in life, I go around every day laughing, singing, dancing, and just being light and sharing my joy with everybody because I want people to feel like I feel.
Now, you mentioned something earlier. Worms have 5 hearts. They eat half their body in weight each day, although there's some people who do that as well. Worms can live up to 10 years. I
know. Yes. They're magic creatures, and they have 5 hearts each. And I do a lot of school workshops. Often the children will say, why do they have 5 hearts? My initial answer is so we can love them a little bit more. And people do. Something about the word heart, it's attached to love, and there is something magic about the word. And my story that I say to the children is, when they were giving out body parts millions of years ago, they had this pile of hearts, and they said, what are we going to do with all these hearts? And they said, the worms are going to be required later on, millions of years from now, and people will be a little bit afraid of them. So why don't we give the worms all these hearts so they can be a little bit more loving?
Oh, how sweet is that?
Thank you.
That's fantastic.
Thank you.
And when you start talking about hearts and the 5 hearts, do the kids warm up and suddenly they want to know more about the worms?
Absolutely.
I mean, does it change anyone's perception?
Not just the children, adults.
Yeah.
Adults also have this melting effect when you mention the 5 hearts.
Right.
It's just like, there's something magic about the word. So absolutely, when people find out the benefit of why you would want to have worms in the house and what they do, it is magic.
Now, what we're going to talk about are the steps that people can actually, if you're interested in starting your own worm composting bin in your home, how can our viewers do that?
Okay, so for the do-it-yourselfers, we sell worms by the pound. And so any container will do. It's not the container that's the magic part. It's the worms are the ingredient.
Right.
So it's creating the right environment. So just like backyard composting, you need some kind of a carbon source. So for the bedding, you can use shredded paper, leaves, straw, cardboard, drink trays, egg cartons, any combination of your paper products. And the nitrogen is your food scraps, so your bananas, orange, melon, so all your fruit, carrots, celery, lettuce, all your veg, so your fruit, veg, coffee, tea, pasta, rice, beans, grains, plant clipping. It's really endless what you can use as the food source. What I say to people is whatever you have that's a waste product for you, you could probably use that.
Right.
Yeah, depending where you are. So whatever you're using for your bedding, then you need about 1 liter of soil for a container for a pound of worms. The red wigglers are not soil dwellers like the night crawlers that come out when it rains. They live in organic matter, so a compost pile, manure pile. You're adding the soil for the grit. They don't have teeth, so for the grit and the microorganisms. They don't have teeth, so the little bugs break down the food for the worms. The worms eat the bugs, so keeping the population in check.
It's a beautiful balance, isn't it?
Isn't it wonderful?
Yeah.
It's fabulous. Then some eggshells, which balances the pH or the acidity in the bedding. And also the worms require the calcium for reproduction. And then water. That's it. Mix everything together. It should be the consistency of a wrung out sponge. Once you've got your ingredients in, you do a squeeze test. A few drops should come out. If no water comes out, add a bit more water. If it streams out, add a bit more dry bedding. And then add your worms on top. When you're feeding the food, you pull back the bedding, add your chopped up food in the hole you've made, and make sure it's covered so you don't get fruit flies.
So can you include things like tea bags?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Poke a hole in your tea bag
All right.
so the worms can get in there.
Yeah.
Most tea bags are made out of synthetic fibers. So, you know, although they will disintegrate, the worms, you know, they, like us, they have 5 favorite foods.
Okay.
Synthetic fibers probably aren't one of them.
Right.
So they'll eat the tea, which is an organic matter. And then I drink a lot of tea, so I'm left with a lot of tea bag fibers in my bin. You can either take them out or just leave them in, they're fine.
Well, I think I'm going to start one at home. This
Yay.
has really inspired me. Wow, yeah, that's really great.
Yes.
Now, what have been some of the challenges, Cathy? I mean, I know that you've won a number of awards.
Yes, I have.
Right.
Thank you.
And there are not many people out there doing what you're doing here.
Right.
But what have been some of the challenges for you in building this business?
One of the challenges with a worm business is we don't have repeat customers.
Okay.
Unlike, you know, the 80-20 rule of business, which is 20% of your clients will give you 80% of your revenue.
Yes.
Not so in a worm business. Once you get worms, you've got them. They have a phenomenal reproduction rate, so they'll increase in number. So you don't have to come back to me for worms unless something happens, and things can go wrong, and I can talk about that after. So not having repeat customers, always having to go out and get new customers. Thank goodness I'm pretty high energy, so it's okay finding new customers. We've got just over 4,000 customers, which is pretty good, but one-offs.
How do you find your customers?
Through media.
Yeah, okay.
I do a lot of media, and also through social media.
Okay.
So I have a really great website, and I've had my website since 2002, so 10 years in internet land is pretty good.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Now, I know that you've got information on a lot of information about worms and composting on your website. I know there's videos, facts, and your URL is cathyscomposters.com. So check it out if you're interested in more information and educating yourself. And there's certainly more information about you as well. So not having repeat customers is a challenge. But where did you get support in building this? I mean, if people's reactions are ick, you know, that there's a definite strong reaction to what you're doing, where did you get support?
Well, I have an incredible network of positive friends. I'm in a huge eco network, so all the eco people know about worms. They may not have worms, but they know about the value of worms. And just knowing, you know, really the inner knowing that I'm doing the right thing. There was many times over the past 10 years where I thought, oh gosh, Ontario/Canada, North America is not ready for me and the worms. Because it's so easy. We're really a disposable society, so we have to do any extra work, you know, do we really want to do that? It's a necessity. This is really something necessary. And I just know that it's important. I know that I was put here for this reason, and so it just keeps me going. And whenever I thought, maybe I better just get my resume out and I'll just get a job, it would be a lot easier, something would happen. I'd get a call, I'd get a contract, you know, I do lunch and learn, so just something would come along and I'd say, okay, universe, I'm still here, I'm in it. And it's actually supporting myself and my husband full time. This is all we do. And
there's been a documentary made about your life.
Squirm, yes.
Yeah.
I know.
Tell us about that.
Well, that came about, you know, I have a connection with Michigan. I seem to have a really strong connection to Michigan. And there's a woman, Mary Applehoff, who wrote a book called Worms Eat My Garbage. She's from Michigan. She passed in '05. Because I got an article in BioCycle, which is the state's composting and recycling journal. As a result of that, an organization in Lansing, Michigan contacted me. They loved my schoolwork, and anyway, we got together. They wanted to talk about what we could do together. We created an online format called Worms Without Borders, and it was for schools to share stories. Michigan is far ahead of us in vermiculture because of Mary's fine work. my husband and I went down to Michigan to meet with some teachers to see how we could keep the kids safe online and brainstorm about this new initiative. And while I was there, I wanted to, her business is still operating, but she had passed. So I asked a couple of people if they had heard of Mary or if they had heard of vermicomposting, and they hadn't. And I thought, oh my gosh, when you die, you're dead, unless somebody keeps you alive. Somehow we had landed in Flint, Michigan, where Michael Moore is from, and I don't know why, until I realized, oh my gosh, Michael's from Flint, from Michigan, Mary's from Michigan. I'm going to contact Michael Moore and get him to write about Mary. I wanted him to do a documentary about Mary. And my girlfriend said, he's a big picture thinker. He's not going to care about Mary Applehoff. And I thought, oh, yeah, of course he will. Tell him how the worms can help Michigan. So I had a freelance writer, beautiful Carol Plant, interview me and write a beautiful letter, my words, my thoughts in her words, about the worms, and it was just a beautiful letter, and I sent it to Michael Moore, and he says he answers all his emails. He doesn't. Anyway, I carried this letter around with me, knowing that he comes to Toronto for the film festival, that the 6 Degrees of Separation, somebody in Toronto knows Michael Moore, several somebodies, and so I carried my letter around with me. When I was at the film festival, the Green Reel Film Festival, the first year, before my documentary, I had my letter there, and I said to Darcy Hoover, who's the filmmaker, and I didn't know he was, hey, I'm trying to get Michael Moore to do a letter about the worms, and here's a letter that I wrote just as a lark, here, read this. And he read it. He called his partner over and said, Dave, come and read this. And he said, why don't we do this project? And it just, Darcy followed me around for a year to various events and workshops and put together this beautiful 40-minute documentary.
Well, that is really inspiring.
Thank
so
you.
It had a run at a film festival.
It did.
Did it
yes, it did. I know, the Green Reel Film Festival in 2008. So exciting. Just again, magic. Just, you know, I think when you're on purpose and when you focus, the universe truly does conspire to help you when you know what it is that you want to do. When you're not floundering, oh, I'm not sure, do I want to do that? No, be sure, focus on what you want to do, and
magic happens.
Magic happens. So I ask your viewers, what is their worm farm for them? Don't they want to feel like how I look? Like you know, I go into high school, and they're my favorite. The high schools, like the elementary, they get it. They're yours already because they haven't reached that cool age yet. When you get into high school, you're really cool, and it's all about you. So I'll go into high school classes, and the kids are like leaning back and rolling their eyes. And then I come in and do my, like, I'm high energy. So I'm like, la, 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 the worms, boo, doo, 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 doo. And I'm so confident in myself. Then they kind of sit up and take note, oh gosh, what is she doing? And then I ask them, you know, I challenge you to find out if your parents are blissfully happy. Well, you know already. Do they come home from work and grump about the boss and they're complaining about their job and la 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 and rah, rah, rah? I don't complain about my job. I'm so happy in what I'm doing. And then they go, wow, and I see the heads nodding. Oh, yeah, that was she in my house? Was she at my table last night? That was my mom or dad, or yeah. So I think I put little seeds in people's mind to make them kind of open a little bit, a little opening. Wow, I could be an entrepreneur. And I say, if you have an idea and you think, I could do that better, you could have a business there. You know, look at that.
Well, Cathy, I've really enjoyed this time. Unfortunately, our time is up.
Already?
We're out of time. But you know, thank you for coming on the show and
Shannon.
sharing your story, sharing some of your wisdom and advice for my viewers. So really appreciate that. And of course, if you're interested in finding out more about Cathy Nesbitt and her organization and what she's doing, you can visit my website at extraordinarywomentv.com, where you'll find her episode page and more information about her. So thanks again, Cathy.
Thank you, Shannon.
We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll be talking about personalities and what type of personality do you have? Well, stay with us. We'll be back.